So, good evening everyone. Thank you for being here. It's Rémi's fourth time in Auroville, third study. He came first year with the eco-poetics of Auroville, and second year on divine anarchy. We have the studies if you're interested to read them, and so we are eager to hear his exploration on the spirituality in Auroville, and there will be an interaction at the end. So, yeah, please welcome Rémi.
So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much to the French Pavilion and all the people who make this possible. So Viveka, Claude, Nathalie, and all the others that were very welcoming in hosting this third presentation. As Viveka just said, I started with a study on beauty in Auroville. And then it led me to the question of the political question actually in Auroville, and it was the talk on divine anarchy, and of course divine anarchy led me quite naturally to the question of spirituality that I'm going to talk about today. So I'll start with the story that when Aurovillian told me, you know, there are many wonderful stories by Aurovillians about the way they arrived here, the reasons, and often the strange, ways that led them here. And so this is a story of someone who arrived in the 80s and who, after being wandered for 1 year or 2 years around the world, ended up in Paris-Cergy and then was attracted to Auroville. And she first hosted herself in a small capsule in the green belt, so those very rudimentary housings in the forest where there was absolutely no furniture. So she slept on a small cot on the floor, and there was almost nothing, and there was no mirror in this hut. So she lived in Auroville for quite a while before she had the opportunity to look at herself again in a mirror. And after a few weeks, when she had this opportunity, she discovered a face in the mirror that she didn't recognize. So it was her face, and she told me that she loved it. So I'm telling this story because I think it's beautiful, and it's somehow something I would like to do myself, being some kind of mirror, giving back an image to Auroville, to Aurovillians, or to people who are an interest in Auroville, and I hope this image, you will like it, even if you don't recognize all of it, of course. So my talk is about the question of spirituality, and this, more precisely, is Auroville a spiritual city? This first question actually divides in two questions. What is spirituality? And this is, first of all, a very difficult matter to decide. And there's no unanimity about what we put behind this word. And this is part of the problems, actually. There's no agreement about what spirituality means. Everybody has his own definition of it, and that's part of the problem. And the second question is, what is Auroville? And this is, again, a very difficult question. To relate spirituality and Auroville, as I will try to do it, will not lead me to enter the question of each individual spiritual path. So I won't talk about this. I'm not a spiritual person myself. I'm not a religious person. I'm not engaged in a spiritual path. So I see it from the outside, and I won't dare to enter this more intimate part, but maybe you'll share your experience of it at the end of the talk. But what I'll be talking about is what is awaited, what people
think? What are the expectations about spirituality in Auroville? And most of the time, when you start to investigate this question, you find two different, and mostly accusations, basically. People really have these two different takes on the question, and that will be actually the plan of my talk. The first part will be about the first accusation, the big accusation, saying that Auroville is not spiritual at all, or is not enough spiritual. And this is a question, this is an accusation of materialism, basically. The second accusation, that will be the second part of my talk, will be more or less the exact opposite of this first accusation. It's the accusation of being extremely religious to a point that it becomes cultish. So, materialism on one side, cultish deviance on the other side, are the two most common accusations that you find against Auroville. And in the last part of my talk, in the third part, I'll try to make a proposition to better understand what Auroville spirituality has, and that makes it special. And I will try to I have this suggestion that we cannot think about spirituality, and maybe we have to abandon the very word of spirituality and to think in terms of spirit and what is known here as the spirit of Auroville, which is a very particular kind of spirituality. So this will be at the end of the talk. But first, the first accusation, the accusation of a shameless materialism that would be going on in the city. And I'll talk about that through two stories that happened at two different times of the history of Auroville. One quite a long time ago, in the 80s, and another one, the second one, much more recently, because it happened 2 years ago. The first one, I call it A Good Day for Tennis, because I take it from William B. Morris' book called The Dawning of Auroville. It's a compilation of articles about the first years in Auroville. It has been published in 1994, at least the edition I read. And you find in B's book, because he's known here as B, in B's book, The Dawning of Auroville, the beginning of chapter 10 starts with this story about tennis. Some foreign missionaries living in another part of India came for a visit. When they saw people playing tennis, they remarked, "How can you play tennis with so many people, poor people in the village?" And they left indignantly. So you can see a beautiful picture of Frederick playing tennis in the 80s. So what was it about? These people had obviously a very, I would say, stubborn and limited conception of spirituality. And when they arrived to Auroville and they saw people just playing games, enjoying themselves, enjoying life, this was so different from their conception of spirituality that they said, "Well, this is not a spiritual city." And they left. But, of course, this is a very, as I said, limited conception of spirituality that has nothing to do with what happens in Auroville and what Auroville is meant to be. And we can almost guess that these people not only had a very limited conception of spirituality, but probably this conception was very far away from any joy of living. I mean, it was not compatible. Their conception of spirituality was not compatible with the sheer idea of joy, enjoying life, enjoying a beautiful day, enjoying life in Auroville. So this is the first anecdote. And of course, what would have been their surprise if only a few years earlier they had come to the ashram in Pondicherry to find the mother herself playing tennis. Because the mother loved this game and played it till at a very old age, as you can see on this beautiful photograph by Henri Cartier-Bresson. So the mother thought that tennis was a very spiritual activity, and it was part of what the ashramites, the students at the ashram, should practice. And of course, she had by no means a conception of spirituality that left sports on the side. And this is what she says about sports in general and the necessity to build a strong body to be able for this body to be able to receive a strong spirituality. We do not want to reject the body, but transform it. For this, physical education is one of the means most directly effective. We want to come in contact with the supreme consciousness, the universal consciousness. We want to bring it down in ourselves and to manifest it. But for that, we need to have a solid base. Our base is our physical being in our body. Therefore, we have to build up a body solid, healthy, enduring, skillful, agile, and strong, ready for everything. There is no way to prepare the body than physical exercise. Sports, athletics, gymnastics, and all the games are the best means to develop and strengthen the body. So you see, it's a very different conception of spirituality that is expressed here by the mother. The second anecdote that I call the bad day for the ego and a humbling speech was given by the governor of Tamil Nadu, Sri Ravi, who is the president of the Auroville governing board. So he gave this speech 2 years ago, just after the events of Auroville started, and he paid a visit, and he had an accusation that was more or less aligned with the accusation that the missionaries hold against Auroville on the subject of tennis. For him, it's a subject of business. So what did Sri Ravi accused Aurovillians of? Well, this is what he said in a very, aggressive speech. First and foremost, a stipulation is through the charter, the Auroville charter, that a person coming to Auroville has to be a bhakta, a devotee, a willing servitor of the divine consciousness. Now, it pains me, when I moved around, the sadhana element of it, we find it grossly deficient. Grossly deficient. Now the question is, when I look here, I find a lot of commercial activities going on. Somebody is doing good business here. Is it a place for commerce? No, certainly not. So this is the very arrogant, in a sense, speech of someone who had not understood the least of the special spirituality that is nurtured in Auroville according to what the mother, Sri Aurobindo, invented as the integral yoga and a special sense of spiritual activities. For Governor Ravi, of course, it's a question of, he goes through the streets of Auroville and he sees things he doesn't want to see. You see commerce, for instance, business, units that are, prosperous maybe. And at the same time, he doesn't see what he would like to see because it corresponds to his conception of spirituality. Something much more, I would say, not worldly, not mundane activities, but something much more refined, actually. And of course, he doesn't find it because it's not, Auroville is not meant for this either. So this led me to understand that these accusations are based on misunderstandings of what Auroville is about and what spirituality can be, which is not mandatorily some airy experience of meditation or concentration and some exercises that are on the mental plane. It can also be something that is very much attached to the material world, and this is what Auroville, of course, is trying to develop. So this led me to make this opposition between a superficial spirituality, something that you can immediately see around you, in certain behaviors, and certain interdictions, basically, and more deeper spirituality that you cannot see actually. And this is the problem. The missionaries, just like the Governor Ravi, they didn't see, and they wanted to see spirituality. This deeper spirituality, of course, is something much more secret, much more, you have to look for it to begin to see it unravel. And of course, it's what more or less most of the people who come for 3 days, a week or two, see of Auroville. All this offer, really abundant offer of therapies, yoga activities, dance classes, pranayama. All of this is what most people and most tourists will think Auroville is all about. So this kind of superficial spirituality that Governor Ravi had himself seen. And of course, it has nothing to do with the real spirituality that is deeper, I would say, in the heart of the city, and in the Aurovilles, of course. There's an explanation. We can all, whatever our background, even if we're Westerners, we understand this idea that spirituality is something that is to be very respectable. And this is also what probably in the Indian culture is even more difficult to understand. So this is, I understood this when I read Deepti's comment, and I put, this funny picture of Johnny from Fertile, who is the incarnation, in a sense, of this to the ground, much more to the ground, non-refined way of being an Aurovillian and doing his very particular sadhana. Deepti said, and I will read, generally, Auroville's image is bad in India. There are those Indians who feel the deeper aspect of what's going on, but many others have a strong reaction against the community because it is perceived as being a society where people's way of being is totally without refinement. And for some Indians, refinement as reflection of inner development is important. If anything, in Auroville, we have dismissed refinement as a mannerism and made a fetish out of being ourselves, our lower selves. So you see, in the Indian culture, spirituality has to go somehow with some refinement, with the clothes you wear, with the way you act, with the way you don't expose yourself, you don't expose your activities, just like business or tennis or all of that. And of course, it's not at all what Auroville is about. And Sri Aurobindo helps us understand how this superficial spirituality is in no way close to what he intended to do with the ashram and with Auroville. He has a much more complex definition of Auroville, saying, as you will see, that everything is good, every spiritual path is useful, but and even the superficial spirituality is good in a sense, but you cannot rely on that. You cannot stop at this superficiality. You have to go deeper. So this is what he says in this extract of Life Divine. It must therefore be emphasized that spirituality is not a higher intellectuality, not idealism, not an ethical turn of mind or moral purity and austerity, not religiosity or an ardent and exalted emotional fervor, not even a compound of all these excellent things. A mental belief, creed or faith, an emotional aspiration, a regulation of conduct according to a religious or ethical formula are not, and this is my emphasis, are not spiritual achievement and experience. These things are of considerable value to the mind and life. They are of value to the spiritual evolution itself as preparatory movements, disciplining, purifying, or giving a suitable form to the nature. But they still belong to the mental evolution, the beginning of a spiritual realization, experience, change is not yet here. So you see, Sri Aurobindo is very clear about the fact that you can engage in some spiritual activities of a superficial nature. It can help you, but you mustn't stop there. You have to go beyond and enter this other realm of, and I emphasized it also, these three words: realization, experience, and change or transformation. This is the real spiritual accomplishment for Sri Aurobindo. But even if there's a lot of materialism that you can spot in Auroville, there is also the exact contrary that is, and that nourishes the second opposite accusation, the accusation of cultish deviance. On the contrary, there are evidences that there is a lot of devotion going on in Auroville, and first of all, of course, devotion to the mother, and some also, of course, the matrimondier is also this, the soul of the city, this temple, and everything converges towards the matrimondier. So that makes Auroville look like a very much religious society, this importance of the matrimondier. And secondly, of course, the portraits of Sri Aurobindo and the mother that you see almost everywhere, in every unit, in every house, every guest house, almost everywhere, you will see those portraits of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And this gives also the impression to someone who spends only a few days here that there is a lot of devotion going on, and that looks like a cult. But these are, once again, only appearances. And if you look into the words of the mother, most of all, you see that, and of course, yes, I wanted to speak also of the presence of all the Indian deities and the Hindu godheads that you will see almost everywhere too. But as I said, if you look to the intention of the mother, the idea that Auroville could transform into some kind of religion was abhorred, absolutely abhorred by her. She was very clear, and these are two very important quotes of the mother in the 60s and 70s. No new religions, no dogmas, no fixed teachings. That's what she said about Auroville. One must avoid one must avoid at all costs, the thing becoming a new religion. Because as soon as it is formulated in a way that is elegant and imposing and has a force, it would be the end. And the second one, also with capital letters, for Auroville, the program is this one: experimental research of the supreme truth, a life divine, but no religion. Capital letters. So there is absolutely no doubt that any cult would be completely misunderstanding of Auroville's goal, objectives. And of course, it's very evident if you look at to the text. You find always, in Sri Aurobindo's writing, in the mother's sayings, you will find a lot of the word God, the word divine, are almost every page you will find them. But you find also that these terms are not are not important as such. And for instance, you will find instead of divine, you will find supreme. And actually, in the 60s, when the mother advertised in the world, she broadcast this call to the young people of the world to come to Auroville. And she wanted to make clear, especially for the communist part of the world at the time, in the 60s, and mostly in the Soviet Union, she couldn't write, to come to Auroville, you have to be a servitor of the divine, consciousness. So she had no problem switching the words, and it has become you have to be a divine servitor of the supreme consciousness. So the word divine has been obliterated because it was not absolutely needed. So you see, there was some plasticity, and the idea of God itself is not so important, and it's sometimes replaced by the word truth. And truth also is very important because it explains, it relates also to the philosophy, to Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, who is a philosopher and a rationalist philosopher. He grounds all his teachings in a very scientific conception of the evolution of the universe and of mankind. So this idea of truth, that Aurovillians are looking for truth, is very different than if they were looking only for God. No, they are looking for the supreme truth. So there is absolutely no ambivalence about the relation to religion in Auroville. Of course, one can be surprised that Mother, even if she was very reluctant to see portraits of her, Sri Aurobindo, everywhere, she allowed some behaviors, some devotional behaviors. And of course, as you probably know, she used to give darshans 4 times a year from the balcony of the ashram, and so the crowd would gather in the streets below the balcony to see and have this direct contact with the mother. And she's reported to have said that although this seems quite a religious behavior, she's said to have, or maybe she expressed actually this thought. She said, "Why do men want to worship? It's far better to become than to worship. It is the reluctance to change that makes one worship." In 1969. So she gave darshan, but at the same time, she was very embarrassed with these devotional practices and thought that this is not a good way. I mean, adoration is not, has nothing, just like Sri Aurobindo in the previous quotation, it has nothing to do with actual transformation. And the risk is that if you adore, well, you're reluctant to change, and you're not welcoming the transformation in yourself. I mean, there's the danger of that. But of course, we can say that Auroville is based nonetheless on an esoteric creed, which is the belief that the mother had a force. She was maybe an avatar, so she had embodied the power of the divine, and she had the force that she transmitted to people who came to see her. And during the darshans, and many Aurovillians also had les entretiens d'aspiration, for instance. They had meetings with the mother. And there are lots of testimonies who speak of this special power, this spiritual power of the mother. And the mother's force, of course, is what created Auroville. If you ask many Aurovillians, they will tell you that mother's force is still here. It's in the ground. It has been transferred, and this is the very will of the mother, it has been transferred to the earth around here, to the matrimony here, to every building, every road in Auroville is full of the mother's force. So this is a beautiful representation of the energy of the mothers bringing out from the ground, and this was taken, this picture I took at New Year's Eve, and you're really sitting on the, I like it really much. I cannot close this second part without mentioning something very interesting that is related to the fact that the question of spirituality for Auroville has been something that the High Court of Justice of India had to decide. What is the real status of Auroville? Is it a religious adventure, or is it a spiritual adventure? But what does it mean, spiritual? So this case has been given to the High Court of Justice in the 80s. Maybe you know that there has been a struggle between the Sri Aurobindo Society, who claimed ownership on the lands and the possessions of Auroville and the money that came from Auroville, and the Aurovillians, who said, no, this is, we are not, we are autonomous. We want to rule the city for ourselves, and we don't want to be ruled by those people in Paris-Cergy. So there was this struggle for almost 10 years, and the High Court of Madras, I think, or is it Delhi maybe, who had to decide, but what is Auroville all about? And they decided that it was not a religious thing going on, and then it didn't belong to the Sri Aurobindo Society to rule it. And the court gave all the responsibility, of course, of leading and organizing themselves to the Aurovillians, saying this is a spiritual adventure and not a religious adventure. During the case, the hearings of the case, there's a very interesting story that is told in one of the booklets that you will find at the French Pavilion. It's the story of the foundation law in '88, and it's told by Alain Bernard, who was there, who went to Delhi, and he tells this story of what the attorney, I don't know if you call it that way, who defended the case for the Aurovillians, what he said to the court. He was inspired by Kiri Joshi, who is a very important person for Auroville, who himself claimed to have been inspired by the mother directly. He had been provided this definition. It came to him through the night, just before the final hearings. this very clear in a sense, but ambiguous, we will talk about it, definition of the difference between philosophy, religion, and yoga. And this was very important to make the distinction that would lead to Auroville's autonomy. So this is this definition. Philosophy, religion, and yoga all seek God. But the method of philosophy is reasoning. The method of religion is credos, rituals, and ceremonies. And the method of yoga is none of that. It is to achieve a change of consciousness through the change of consciousness. So it's at the same time a very clear distinction between philosophy, religion, and what happens in Auroville and what is Sri Aurobindo's teaching. Sri Aurobindo's yoga is something different. It is not fixed in the method of philosophy. It is not fixed in the credos and rituals of a religion. It is a change of consciousness happening through the change of consciousness, which is a very redundant definition if you think about it. But what does it mean? It means that you cannot impose the special spirituality of Auroville from the outside. It is something that has to grow from the inside, and that will only grow if there is a beginning of change, then the change of consciousness will happen. But there's nothing else that will start the process as the common, some unanimity, some goodwill to start this new spirituality. And to close this chapter, two beautiful quotes by Sri Aurobindo that once again put the stress on the difference between what he does, what he wrote, and the religion or philosophy. First, he says, "I am not an ascetic, not a saint, not a holy man, not even a religious man." Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm not an ascetic, not a saint, not a holy man, not even a religious man. I have no religion, no code of conduct, no morality. This is a strong statement, huh? It was in the 20s probably. And a second one, Sri Aurobindo, I love this one, saying, "I am not a philosopher. I have had the experience of all I have written about." So the stress of it on experience is, of course, capital. If you don't understand that, you have not understood at all what Sri Aurobindo's special spirituality is about. And I propose in the last part of my talk to see it as something that goes beyond spirituality as we usually think of this term. What is it about? It is not something that Auroville is a link between the past, the present, and the future. It's a way forward towards the future. So spirituality is, of course, very good. It comes in the human cycle. One of Sri Aurobindo's book is described as coming after the age of religions. So the age of spirituality, and Malraux said the 21st century will be the age of spirituality, but Sri Aurobindo wants something that goes beyond spirituality itself, towards a whole new creation. So you see, for instance, Mother in 1957 being very clear about the fact that what happens here has nothing to do with whatever is called spirituality anywhere else in the world. It is not a question of repeating spiritually what others have done before us. For our adventure begins beyond that. It is a question of a new creation, entirely new, with all the unforeseen events, the risks, the hazards it entails. A real adventure whose goal is certain victory, but the road to which is unknown and must be traced out step by step in the unexplored. So not repeating what the old spirituality, the spirituality of the old world has been about, but jumping, leaping to the next step of the evolution in an adventure in the unexplored spirituality. And this spirituality has nothing to do, as we've seen in the beginning, with this very ascetic spirituality we usually have in mind. On the contrary, it has all to do with this concrete, real world, this ground we're stepping on. And this is a definition that can help us understand what it is, a definition of karma yoga by the mother in 56. It is not, so karma yoga is the yoga, the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo. It is not a new conception of spiritual life and the divine reality. The old spirituality was an escape from life into the divine reality, leaving the world just where it was, as it was. Whereas our new vision, on the contrary, is the divinization of life, a transformation of the material world into a divine world. So you see the stress put here on the idea that the work we have to do with this yoga is nothing that will extract ourselves from the daily activities, but it's on the contrary, it's by working on this concrete world, in this concrete world, that this work is done. This is a quote by an Aurovillian that I like very much, the quote. I don't know the Aurovillian, but I think it's very subtle in the way that he has understood what is asked to the Aurovillians in this yoga. David Vicanden says that Auroville basically is this karma yoga that affects all aspects of human life. So you see this quote, Auroville is an avenue to the future, a place where change can happen. Real change, fundamental change, which means a change of consciousness expressing itself in a change of institutional patterns, social patterns, technological patterns, all aspects of human life, my emphasis. This work, this work for integral change has nothing to do with saffron robes, guru worship, rites, rituals, or eating nothing but vegetables. All these things have been around for a long time and have done little to change the human condition. We want to grasp the root of the problem. We want a truly radical revolution that transforms the substance, not just alters the style. This is very important, the idea that in this karma yoga you're working the substance of things, not only the superficial veneer. The spirituality we've been talking about at the beginning was a veneer of spirituality, what you can see, those saffron robes and all that. This is not what it is about here. Here we are going for the substance, to change the substance, to divinize this substance. So you understand why, I hope so at the end of this talk, you understand why in Auroville you can play tennis. And you can, of course, start a unit selling, I don't know, incense or whatever. This is what brings the very special spirituality of Auroville, which I think we have to think about in the guise with this word of spirit. We can keep spirit instead of spirituality. The Spirit of Auroville is the title of a book that collects all the letters that have been sent to Governor Ravi. Remember the humbling speech he had given 2 years ago? So this is a collection of the letters by Aurovillians telling him, well, what he had seen wrong, what was wrong with his conception of spirituality. And this is called the spirit of Auroville. An expression that the mother herself had used in the 60s already. She was already talking of the spirit of Auroville, and she defined it this way. Basically, the art of creating unity with complexity. Without uniformity, you see, unity through the harmony of complexity, each thing is in its place. And to make this very clear that it is not a withdrawal from the world, Auroville has to follow the path of Sri Aurobindo. And Sri Aurobindo himself is not a philosopher, as we've seen before. He's not he's opened a path, but the mother rephrases that in this very interesting quote, saying that what Sri Aurobindo represents in the world's history is not a teaching, not even a revelation. It is a decisive action, direct from the Supreme. So the insistence on the idea that Sri Aurobindo himself is not someone who has brought some knowledge, but he has been an action in the world. He has transformed the world. He has brought it to a level of conscience where the transformation can start to happen. So conclusion. Is Auroville, after all, a spiritual city? Well, I hope you have now glimpses of what I think about that. I would say only maybe one thing that is very evident is that there were many communities like Auroville in the 70s and 2 years later in the 80s, 90s, and the 20s. Most of them lasted only a few months, 2 years, 5 years at the most. So it's one of the most ancient intentional community in the world. And of course, without spirituality, it would have been just impossible. So of course, Auroville is a spiritual city, and it's the multiplicity and the forests around here, the buildings around it, everything is a testimony of the fact that Auroville is of course not a failure, but has had incredible achievements. And these are not only material achievements, these very material achievements are spiritual achievements, because there is no divide here between materiality and spirituality. So just to finish on a light note, let's see a small clip of the mother herself getting out of her car and playing tennis. I find this very moving. You can find it on YouTube. And the last quotation about tennis, because she was very angry sometimes with the people who didn't understand how much spirituality you can put in a game of tennis. You have this extraordinary opportunity to be able to play tennis and exercise in an atmosphere so filled with divine consciousness, light and power, that your every movement is, so to speak, imbued with consciousness, light, and a power that is in itself an intensive yoga. And your ignorance and consciousness, blindness, and lack of sensitivity are such that you believe you are awarding a game to a good old lady for whom you feel some gratitude and some affection, or even helping her to play. So this is, to finish on a funny note, this is very important to, if you're able to put consciousness in what you do, whatever it is, when you play tennis, when you wash the dishes, when you plant a tree, you are very far away from these old conceptions of spirituality, and you, of course, you have a very strong answer, a decisive answer to all the accusations that have been held against Auroville since more than 50 years now. Thank you very much. So the question is we have to bring to divinize the matter, but the divine is in the matter already, in a sense. So what's the point? I mean, how do we do it? I think the answer is that we as humans, we are a very special species among all other living things, and of course everything that exists, not even living. We have this capacity of consciousness. So in Sri Aurobindo's spirituality, this is the task of the human species, to hasten, to make it become more quickly a divine life. So of course, we couldn't bring consciousness to the matter if there was not some divine ferment that is already here in the matter, engraved in the matter. But we have to unravel it, we have to help it grow. You can live a life as a human, but of course as a plant, as a dog, as a stone, without any consciousness at all, and this is okay, but the world won't change. But we as a species, we have this special possibility to make it, to accelerate the process of the universe. So this is what we can do, and what we should do. And Sri Aurobindo is very clear about that. If we don't do it as a human species, then another species, much more elevated in consciousness, will do it for us, and we will disappear. So this is our chance. Yes, actually.
So you were talking about how like sort of most conventional religions and spirituality are quite surface level, and in order to like truly discover your personal spirituality, you must go and search for it. But how can you possibly search for the answer to a question when you don't even know the question itself? And how do you find this question?
So I'm completely sure I see your point, but let me answer this way. Maybe it's very much related to the answer I just gave. You can live this life without doing anything, without being conscious of the question. But for most people, at some point of life, whatever the achievements you will acquire, for instance, money, a very good life, luxury holidays, nice car, beautiful man or woman as a companion, well, you think at some point this is not enough. We're not here to be satisfied with that. Let's keep it. Let's keep that for some other time. But yes, most of humans at some point they discover that their life is meaningless. If you're satisfied with that. But some people they will never ask this question. But this is not a problem. It is a problem for Auroville. The mother was very clear about that. If you have no problem with the outer world and the way it goes, well, Auroville is not for you. But if you hear this question, if you have this this interrogation springing in yourself, well, you have maybe something to do in Auroville.
If I could, so I've been here 7 years, and it's been a very unfolding process. I didn't really know what I was looking for, but this question keeps coming back every so often, every time. I always wonder, okay, where am I today? Where am I going? And the field of Auroville is allowing for me to explore and let this give value to the process of unfolding. I think it's not a definite answer I'm looking for.
So it's sort of a self-fulfilling question almost.
It's something that makes me feel I'm growing, that I'm going towards something, and it's a question that's also evolving. I'm definitely feeling going in a direction, and I think that path also gets clearer for me with the interaction with the books. So some things I would read in the beginning would not make any sense. With after a few years, I would read it again, and it would take more meaning, a certain meaning. And so it's very experiential, and the tools are here in this field. That's how I experience it.
And it's also linked to this very mysterious definition of what's happening